Hey everybody, this is Susan Kokinda. I hope you subscribe, comment, and like Crypto Rich.
Hey Tom, hey Susan. Hello guys.
Hi.
Hey,
Here we are again. It's been ages.
A long time no see.
Long time, right? And I'll have the links to where people can find your incredible work, prometheanaction.com and tomluongo.me, and your X profiles. And please do go and follow them. And I really appreciate that you two come on once a month together, and with Alex, who was unable to make it tonight, but in January, hopefully that'll work out for all four of us. No,
we miss him.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, and he probably misses the sleep that he gets by listening to my podcasts. He said a video recorded with him recently. He said, "I do listen to your shows, Rich, but I always fall asleep before they finish."
Well, what I've been able to figure out, knowing Alex pretty well over the years, is that he works harder than Trump does. And so, Godspeed, Alex. You need a day off, dude. Like you do. And the world will still be melting down tomorrow, my friend.
Absolutely. So if you want to give regards to Alex in the comments, please do so. Okay. Please wish him a good sleep, a good rest. Okay. Now, we did a video about what was happening in Europe and the war that Europe is waging against the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a war happening internally. And Susan, I'm going to ask you to kick off, and then Tom, you can come in. Yeah. So,
no, I mean you can begin to see the resistance resurfacing. In our previous discussion, I mentioned how the British in 2018 talked about all the networks they had on the ground in the United States to try and keep Trump in line, and you can bet that they're all being activated at this point. I mean, we're not going to talk about the Democrats because that's just so obvious. They're insane, they're evil, they're obstructionist. They don't even pretend that they're doing anything for the benefit of the country. So that's a given. But, the problem that we have is within the Republican Party itself. And you can see that in terms of two things that just happened in the Congress, where the House just passed the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, some of which really doesn't have teeth until it's funded, but some of it really locks Trump into policies that he doesn't want, like keeping all of our troops in Europe. I mean, that just got locked in the NDAA.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You also have, efforts to try and deal with this healthcare crisis in the United States, which is a crisis. And Trump has been very clear that the way he wants to solve this is stop giving money to the insurance companies and give them directly to the people so that they can find the kind of health care they want. But in the interim, until you get that, which means you've got to get the Congress to agree to it, which is not going to be easy, we've got you've got Obamacare and the expiration of the subsidies, and it's a terrible program, and it's terrible health care, and Trump wants to get rid of it. But in the meantime, it's what we've got, and subsidies are going to be expiring, which means a lot of lower income, middle class people are about to get whomped by huge health insurance premiums. And an effort to do something to ameliorate this just got defeated in the Senate because of a bunch of Republicans. I mean, obviously joining with the Democrats, but as I say, that's a given. So, Trump is now dealing with his own rear guard as far as that goes. And part of it is because there's perception and then there's reality. The reality is you still have a lot of people in this economy who are still suffering because of Joe Biden's policies and the policies of the past 30, 40 years. Many of those policies have to be changed by congressional action. What Trump can do through executive order, he's doing in terms of tariffs, in terms of various agricultural policies. Obviously, they got the price of eggs down very quickly. Last week, he had he had a meeting with farmers and ranchers and outlined all sorts of steps he's taking to begin to take the burdens off the actual producers. He's coming down hard on the meat processors and the cartels, to begin to get the cattle herds up and support the actual producers so that they can produce more food at prices that people can afford here in the United States, taking certain steps in terms of equipment. I mean, it was like an hour and a half discussion with farmers and ranchers, which you see in each sector of the economy, where he's doing everything he can from the standpoint of executive action to go in and break the back of inflation sector by sector, because you don't do it by just waving your hands. Some of it is interest rates, but a lot of it is, how do you actually spin up the productive capacity so you're producing? We have shortages in housing. We have shortages in beef. Our cattle herds are at the lowest level they've been in decades. I can't remember how many. So these are real. And his administration is addressing that. So, but that some of that is going to take time. And that's where you get to the perception, right? Where the Democrats and the the chatterheads in social media and so on, Trump is spending too much time on foreign policy. He's not paying attention to domestic policy, and it's having a frictional effect on a lot of the layers of his base. Now, I will say we're a long way from that. When you're involved in politics like I am, you're actually a short way from next November, because you better have your candidates lined up right about now.
Right.
But from the standpoint of how this economy is going to unfold and what's going to, what people are going to start to feel in terms of some of these jobs, prices coming down, we're a long way from November. So I'm not panicking right now in terms of the perceptions of Trump's base. And one of the things we're doing here at Promethean Action is we're going to be providing more and more material for people, both in the form of a simple leaflet. This is what this guy has already started to build in the United States. I mean, some huge number of factories, construction, just in the month of November. We're going to put all the details in one place. We're going to make a resource for people where they can go to their state and see how much investment, how many jobs are coming to their state, and so on. So to begin to address the perception problem, which is, well, if I don't see it right now, I'm throwing Trump overboard. And what we're saying to a whole lot of people is, well, first, put on your big girl panties and realize it takes time to actually rebuild some of these sectors of the economy, but it's already starting, and here it is. And wreck it. And what's your alternative? Give Trump the 2 months, 5 months, 6 months. In some cases, it's going to be a year, 2 years, 3 years to actually begin to turn this economy around after 40, 50 years of destruction. You're simply going to be impatient and throw him overboard and then go back to what we've had for the last 50 years, which will be the end of the United States, or be a responsible citizen and understand what he's doing and help us educate and organize other people. One of the things we are going to just really bear down on is as the candidates, especially for Congress and Senate, emerge, we're going to beat them over the head with this. You have to be campaigning on what Trump is actually doing, not the hot button issues that, will get the headlines. But this man is carrying out an industrial renaissance in the United States, which means that your children and your grandchildren have a future. And if we don't get that, you probably won't even have grandchildren, and face that. So there's, as I say, there's the reality, and then there's the perception. And I think the administration has recognized that they haven't really done a good job on the perception question. And people like Navarro is now sort of doing little mini educationals on each sector of the economy. The cabinet meeting on agriculture was really excellent. And of course, Trump went to the Poconos the other day, to do what he does best, which is to just keep the base warm, while we give them the reality of what's unfolding. So we have a problem, but I don't think it's insurmountable.
Yeah, and Susan, one second, Tom. I would say that it's the reality versus the propaganda, and I'm thinking in particular about the conversation we had about what was happening in Europe. That British people, English people, and Europeans are being propagandized. And we don't realize it, that we're being propagandized. And I imagine it's the same in the US, that through the MSN, people are being propagandized. And we're not awake to it. And as part of that, if any of the Trump administration want to come on for an interview, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump even, you can find my email.
You'd have a really good time with Peter Navarro.
Fine, you connect me with him, Susan, right?
Someone connect me with him and I'll connect you with him.
No problem, right? Send me a DM on X. Tom.
Oh, no, I was going to say that I agree, and you can with what Susan's saying, and the panicans, I mean the wrong Republicans, are running around screaming about how Trump's not getting enough done, and it's all slop. It really is, and but it's working, and what you're starting to see is the beginnings of the Democrats start to push left populist, because populism is not a left-right issue. It's populism versus authoritarianism, or populism versus the existing bureaucracy. The bureaucracy is fighting back at every level, and to Susan's point, clearly it's obvious that we have traitors at every level of our bureaucracy. We have guys like Chuck Grassley, who's 92 years old, trying to keep Trump from actually stabbing the district attorney's offices all around the country. So to all the just arrest somebody crowd, you can't, because we saw what happened when they tried to bring Letitia James or Tim Comey to the thing. And it's just like the grand juries are just throwing stuff out, and the DAs are getting thrown out, and the cases are getting thrown out. Like, this is what the deep state looks like, folks.
No, Tom, just on that, so people are clear. And I think what you're saying, well, I'm pretty certain what you're saying is the cases aren't going through because who's presiding over them are the opposition, deep state proxies.
Well, no, it's actually worse than that, Rich. They're being thrown out because the DAs that have been appointed under under emergency, they have a certain amount of time, and then that time period ends, and then they throw the case out, and then the judge in Jim Comey's case just throw it out because the DA brought the case is no longer a valid prosecutor, because she hasn't been confirmed by the Senate, because the Senate's not actually pushing through any of Trump's
judicial
nominees for these things, because of what we call the blue slip, which no one knew anything about, including myself, until since 3 months ago. What's the blue slip? That means that it's a rule in the Senate. I'll explain it. It's a rule in the Senate which says if you have a senator from a particular party, they get to nominate. They get to tell you who your pool of candidates for district. Yeah, it's a veto. They get to veto any candidate that you want to put up for district attorney.
It used to work when you didn't have this, completely out of control extreme partisanship. It was back in the day when the Senate really was much more of a collegial institution, and even though you had differences between Republicans and Democrats, you didn't have people who were just hardwired, I'm going to stop you no matter what, which is what you have now, especially with the Democrats.
Yeah.
They don't make any decisions on the basis of rationality. It's Trump is pushing it, we're going to stop it. So what the rule used to be, let's say a president nominated somebody and the senator from that state actually knew that this guy, was terrible or had, whatever. And so the senator from the state where these judicial appointments came from could basically veto something without it ever going any further. What the Democrats have done is they have vetoed everything. He can get no judicial appointees through.
So if you're in a state with a blue senator, Trump has no control over who gets to be a district attorney. Period. None. He has to listen to Elizabeth Warren's suggestion for the district attorney of Massachusetts.
Or Alyssa Slotkin, who just tried to launch a military insurrection against Trump.
Right. And in the case of New Jersey, where a lot of these cases need to be brought because and remember, the crimes are then committed in jurisdictions where they have control, and jurisdiction is very important in the United States. Right? Why this is very important. This is what really, really, really pisses me off, is that people like, for example, Robert fucking Barnes knows all of this. He knows this, and yet he's still screaming about all this crap. Like, I'm sorry, dude. You know this. You're supposed to be a fucking lawyer. Right? So why do you think it's important that Pam Bondi is the AG? She's from Florida. Why are they impaneling grand juries in Florida for the Russiagate stuff? Why? Because they made the mistake of going into Mar-a-Lago so they could change the jurisdiction of the crimes where they were originally committed, which was in D.C., where they control everything, and they move it to the Southern District of Florida, where Trump has control. That is the level of detail of the people that you're fighting against, folks. They've mapped all this stuff out. And if you, and for, if you're not an American and you're not a Politico and you don't know any of this stuff, all of this just looks like this. Just sounds insane, but it's a vestige of our federal system. It's supposed to be that way. The Senate rule can go away tomorrow. All they got to do is rescind the blue slip. It's just a simple majority. Chuck Grassley won't get rid of it because he's on the take too. So how do you deal with Chuck Grassley? You threaten corn subsidies. And Chuck Grassley will fall over himself tomorrow because he's from Iowa. You want to get Chuck Grassley to get rid of the blue slip and the corn subsidies tomorrow. Get rid of renewable identification numbers for ethanol blending into gasoline tomorrow. Get rid of it. You can get the EPA to do that. You can issue an emergency authorization on this. You can, and especially as we move into planting season and where the farmers are going to have to go to the Department of Ag and everybody else in order to get their loans for the year to do the buy the seeds to get the plants to do the thing. No, you get rid of all of it. Watch Grassley, literally, he won't get thrown down the stairs. He will show up at Trump's office with a black eye because he fell over himself trying to get into the friggin' White House to say, don't do that.
Yeah, and what Trump was clearly doing with that farm meeting in the White House 10 days ago was building up his support among the farmers and ranchers because they announced $18 billion in subsidies as a kind of stopgap. Look, we are changing things structurally, but we know that's not going to help you when you go to the bank to get loans for next planting season. So here, we're giving you some money right now. So what Trump is doing is, building up his own street cred among the ranchers and farmers, and then he's probably going to be in more of a position to put the squeeze on Grassley,
who's 92 and wants to run for another 6-year term.
92 years old. I mean, Chuck Grassley has done service to this country over the decades, but not now.
Or violence, depending on your point of view.
I wanted to pick up on what you said, Tom, because you were addressing people who are not in the United States for which this is arcane and why isn't it happening? I want to address the people in the United States.
They should know better.
Yeah, I do want to address, and this gets, into the Twitter sphere and all the rest of this. You have a conscious psychological warfare operation being run against the MAGA base.
Yes.
And anybody who does what, you just mentioned Robert Barnes, but there's a whole lot of other people out there who say, I'm not going to be happy till I see people marched off in handcuffs. I'm not going to be happy till I see Trump is betraying us because he's not arresting people, because Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama aren't in jail. If you're falling for that, you're falling for a psyop.
Yes.
Because they're trying to split the Trump base up from the standpoint of just being an infant. I want it now. I want my Christmas presents now. Well, you know what? Somebody actually has to make your Christmas presents. Your mom and dad actually have to have enough money to buy you Christmas presents. Somebody actually has to wrap the Christmas presents. If you're 2, you're allowed to, have your little 2-year-old temper tantrum. But there's too much of the MAGA base out there, which is having 2-year-old temper tantrums every day on X and Truth Social and Instagram and so on. And they're going to play right in to this enemy's operation. Trump's vulnerability is as much that, which I think is pure, which is why we're having these conversations right now. But his vulnerability is as much that as the obvious, which is the AOCs and the Jasmine Crockett's and the, Tim Waltz and good grief. I mean, once you see what these people are, why spend any more emotional energy on them? Don't you have better things to do with your brain cells? I don't have enough years left in my life to be upset about these people. I'm more upset about the people in Trump's own base who are undercutting him.
Agreed. Completely agreed. And I keep harping on it, and I keep naming names because I'm at the point where I'm like, we're not going to get anywhere with you people. Like, I called them the law of retardians. Law of retardianism is a new one. Now that's my new version of it. They're terrible and they're just awful. They're like they have become the perfect encapsulation of the opposite of their hero Murray Rothbard, who said, "Never let the perfect be the enemy of the good." And now we have law of retardianism, which is the perfect is the good is the enemy of everything. Like, and they just sit around all day, black pilled, chuckling and collapsitarian, saying, let it all burn. Like, okay, Fine. Are you ready for that? Are you doing, are you out there every day, like doing 20 pull-ups like RFK Jr. and, running tack drills and all the rest of it? Are you? Really? Yeah, shut the fuck up, keyboard warrior. You're not doing any of that stuff. What you're doing is you are projecting your own inability to have any power onto the world because your anxiety and your oppositional defiance disorder and your daddy issues if you're a man and mommy issues if you're a man and daddy issues if you're a girl onto the rest of the world. That's what you're dealing with. And I'm like, and I'm at the point, I'm like, no, we're at war. Like, it's a foxhole. I've been saying it for weeks. I'm going to continue saying it. There are no atheists and there are no libertarians in foxholes, which is why I'm not a libertarian anymore. It's just that simple. And Rand Paul is a part of this freaking problem, and so is Thomas Massie, I'm firmly convinced is an intelligence asset. And, people disagree with me where I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is, but I think all of this stuff is completely designed from the ground up in order that, look, Trump, I've been saying this for weeks, and I could see it on July 14th of last year, the day after Trump got shot. I started to watch the psyops being run out of the Mossad, City of London, Brussels, all of them, about how to start splitting off Trump's base because they knew he couldn't lose the election. They couldn't beat him at the election. They had to they had to start there in order to stop him and play the extended pretend game to the midterms. And their whole strategy is about winning the midterms. I read something this morning, giving an idea. So we're into redistricting. Let's talk about that for a second. This is important. And we had Indiana GOP say no to the redistricting of Indiana. Now, Indiana's supposed to be a hard red state, right? Now, 62-38 friggin' red, right? But it's 7-2 Republican in terms of the House seats. So there's two potential pickups here. If you redistrict the state, easily could turn that into 9-0. And the Indiana GOP shot it down. Why? Somebody on Twitter this morning sent me a big, long DM, private DM, of the top 5 employers in the state of Indiana, all controlled by the City of London. Every goddamn one of them. So as corrupt as we think, like the Georgia GOP is, which is terribly corrupt, Indiana is just as bad. And then that actually tells you, that's why they gave us Mike Pence in 2016.
I was going to say the first thing that came to my mind when I heard this was Mike Pence.
Bingo.
Is he from Indiana?
Mike Pence was never going to decertify the 2020 election, even though it was clearly fraudulent.
That's right. And, what I see, because I'm in touch with people in the Republican Party in a lot of parts of the country in different states, you usually have a bigger problem in the red states than you do in the swing states or the blue states. Because in the red states, they've got it made in the shade, they control everything. And so they're just fat and happy, and they just allow, whether it's the City of London corporations or the Koch brothers or big money coming out of Texas. I mean, Texas is one of the worst, in terms of a red party that will be on the Trump bandwagon as long as they have to, and then start stabbing him in the back as soon as they possibly can. Whereas you're in a state like mine, which is sort of purple, where you've got much more of a feistiness, and the party is much more reflective of the fight, the actual fight. There continues to be a fight in many parties between the establishment and the Trump crowd that's still playing itself out in many places. But in some of these solid red states, which haven't, elected a Democratic senator for decades, their parties are the worst. Yes. Because they're just run by GOP Incorporated.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Like, Florida is one of those things that Dexter White and I talk about this all the time. And it's like Ron DeSantis is out there picking up and trying to lead every one of the things that Trump is trying to push forward. He's at the vanguard of where the policy of where the Trump revolution goes. The end of property taxes, the end of this, the end of that, all those things, right? And you watch DeSantis, but at the same time, you get the Florida GOP doing everything they can to muddy those waters. It's not the Democratic Party in Florida. The Democratic Party in Florida barely exists. The Florida GOP Good Old Boys Network does not want property taxes in the United States, in Florida, to go away for homesteaded properties. They don't want it. So they put out like 5 different weird amendments, to potential amendments to vote on, to put onto the ballot for Florida in 2026. And DeSantis is like, no, I want a one-line thing. Do you want to end property taxes for all homesteaded, for all homes covered by the Save Our Homes Act, which is the homestead exemption? If so, vote yes. If not, vote no. And they want to like split it up and run that idiot Byron Donalds as DeSantis' replacement. Why? Because they're setting up for the destruction of Florida. You have to realize this. And the Bushes are hip deep in the Florida GOP.
The Bushes, and then the other major figure around there is the Koch family interests, because they've got, and we were talking about Massey and Rand Paul, a lot of support for Koch interests.
Yes, absolutely. Because the Koch brothers are fake libertarians. They're the guys who destroyed Cato. They're the guys who got Murray Rothbard thrown out of Cato, like all of it.
And and hysterically, openly anti-Trump. Now, what they're doing right now, their organization called Americans for Prosperity, is sort of boring from within. They've tamped down their anti-Trump. You can't be anti-Trump today. And they've got this massive grassroots machine going on in the United States teaching people how to organize. And I've seen some of their seminars, and they're very nice. They teach you how to knock on a door and not be afraid, and how do you do it, this, that, and the other thing. And they're sitting there laying in wait for, they'll try and sabotage. I don't know if they're going to try and sabotage 2026. We'll have to see how that plays out in terms of that group per se. The enemy is going to try and sabotage 2026, but their long game is, okay, we have to control who the president is going to be in 2028, and it cannot be somebody like J.D. Vance who will continue Trump's policies. So all of that is in play here in the United States right now. And the key thing is just, we've pounded at the fact that Trump has created a new Republican Party. It's not the party of Wall Street. It's not the party of the war hawks. It's the party of workers. It's the party of producers. It's the party of sovereignty. It's the party of peace. And that we've got to create we've got to make sure that message gets below the level of Trump and his cabinet, and that this is the message that's going out to the base of the party. Because then you keep the critical coalitions that delivered for Trump in 2024, the blue-collar workers, the young urban blacks, the Muslim and Arab Americans here in Michigan, the Indian Americans. This is definitely a new Republican Party, and it's based on precisely the principles that are in the national security strategy. And if we don't have people out there campaigning around that, and instead they're just pulling the old Mike Pence Republican Party playbook, the midterms are going to be a catastrophe.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was something I was listening to all that, Susan. I agree with you completely. And I was thinking about, and that's the interesting part about this. So the other day, one of the guys that I hang out with, one of my patrons that I play games with, is also kind of a foreign policy expert. And he picked it, and he's like, sometimes it's really good to sit down and actually read the text of things, not just like, what do I think it says, or no, just like go read the Constitution. And he posted up in our private server, chat server, he's like, Article 1, sections 4 and 5 of the Constitution, where Congress has complete and utter authority over how the House and the Senate are elected. They have complete and utter autonomy. So, as I pointed out the other day in a tweet that was quite obnoxious, like, there it is in black and white. The Congress, especially as far as the House and the Senate, there is the caveat that, when the Constitution was written, because the state legislatures were originally used to appoint the senators. So the Senate has a caveat because the Congress can't say anything about what the Senate does. But Congress can determine, they can make whatever rules they want for federal elections or House seats. It is not subject to the 10th Amendment. Period, paragraph, end of story. The Supremacy Clause is in effect. Period, paragraph, stop. If the Congress does not create a law saying this is how you'll do it, then it's up to the states to do whatever they want. We've been led by all of these people, these TFP, these people, that the states have the absolute right to determine how their House representatives are elected. That is not true. Congress can write a law tomorrow saying, voter ID, yes. Same day voting, yes. You have to, as I put it in the thing, or you have to win a 3-legged sack race against your opponents tied to a midget. It could be whatever rule you wanted to make it. As as straight ahead or as ludicrous as you want to make it. Personally, I like the three-legged stock race with the midget.
Might do better.
Yeah, we might wind up with better candidates. Like, we might, I'll run for Congress under that rule. But they have complete control over this. The fact that nobody talks about it in these terms from up on Capitol Hill, the fact that our libertarian stalwarts like Massey and Paul aren't trying to push that kind of real election reform through. This is the easiest slam dunk populist 100 to 2-0 issue in the United States right now. If you were to champion that bill, you're going to get all the money you're going to get enough money to run for president in 2028. And yet none of them are doing it. I wonder why. No, the Epstein files. No, this, no, that, no, all these stupid blown up speedboats in the Atlantic Ocean and all this crap. Like, excuse me? How about election reform? Because if the GOP actually wanted to win the midterms, this is what they would do. Because that, and the Democrats they would immediately file massive injunctions against, in the court systems and everything else, but it would go right to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court would look right at it, and they would engage Mark Elias and say, tell me again how voter ID laws are an abridgment of the First Amendment. And how the First Amendment trumps Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution. You can't? Voter ID. Done. Same day voting. Done. Ballot harvesting? Fuck off. All of that. It would end tomorrow. And it doesn't. Why? Because 85 to 90% of Congress would impeach Donald Trump tomorrow because he has a J, because his middle name is John. That's the problem. That's what we're dealing with. That's how bad the situation is. And that's what we have to realize. That's why I have no patience for any of these people who are out there splitting hairs over these ridiculous and wrapping themselves in the moral high ground. Like, you don't have any moral high ground. You're standing there telling us that it's wrong for the President of the United States and the Secretary of War to blow up speedboats filled with junk that is killing more Americans a year than we lost during the most violent war we ever fought, which was the American Civil War. How about you take your moral high ground and you shove it right up your ass? We have a war to fight. We are here. This is, as Trump put it in the National Security Strategy document, this is for the civilization. This is a civilizational extinction event that we are living through right now. And if I have a problem with Trump, it's that he's not actually putting it in those terms. Like, he needs to do the thing. And I think he should bypass the media directly, go right to freaking YouTube, sit down, do the fireside chats, breathe fire, and do it. If he starts that tomorrow, we'll win the midterms in a walk, and everybody will be saying, yeah, why don't we? Why? Oh, yeah. And this, let's simply put it up there. You can read the Constitution. I believe you understand that sentence. The sentence is clear. There's no semicolons. There's no commas for the libertarians to complain about. You can't argue about it. It's a simple sentence with a period at the end of it.
Yes.
Pass a law, do a thing. Moreover, if they don't like the way the state prosecuted the election for the members of their house, they can turn around and go, you know what? I don't like that guy. And the simple majority of Congress can go, nope, you're invalid. Why? Because we don't think the election was any good. Why? Oh, because you're a communist. Go. Because I don't like I don't like the fact that your name ends in an O. It's terrible. I don't give a shit. You're out. Congress doesn't need a reason to reject any person that was quote unquote elected by a process that they don't like. They have complete and utter authority here. Complete and utter authority. Just like Donald Trump spent all of 2025 baiting the Democrats into challenging his Article 2 powers as president, and so that he could then get the Supreme Court to go, oh, by the way, no, he can do that. Oh, no, by the way, he can do that. Oh, by the way, he can do that too. And he can do that. And he can do that. And he can do that. Well, Congress can do the same goddamn thing. And they choose not to do it. And there's a reason why. Because we are governed or not governed by traitors. Beholden to a foreign power, and you can pick your poison as to who you think that foreign power is.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Tom.
That's
Susan?
why I'm back to buying guns, folks.
Well, I mean that I've said we're 1, 2, 3 election cycles in the House from actually having a MAGA Congress, but that starts with the population. When we were doing our live Q&A yesterday, I guess it was a while ago, somebody in the chat said, "I'm never going to vote for one of these rhino Republicans," and I said, "Well, unless you've gone out and done the work to try and recruit and educate a good Republican, shut the F up." Because, we can't have we have too many spectators. And of course, this is what social media does deliberately. This is why it is probably 80% of what goes on social media is just psyops, right? It's passivity, it's anger, it's spectatorship, and people have to go out and get your hands dirty. It is hard. I've said it many times. It's hard to actually find let's start at the level of Congress. It's hard to find a candidate who understands what Trump is doing. It's even harder to get them elected.
Yeah.
This is hard. And this is why we do what we do at Promethean Action. We have to lift up the level of the MAGA movement first and foremost, but more broadly, so that they are actual participants in this process. And out of that, you're going to get a better quality of candidates. I mean, I know how hard it is. Sometimes even to just get a Republican to run in one of these Democratic districts. But like I say, it's harder to find somebody who understands what Trump is doing. And then it's even harder because they're not going to get any backing from the establishment in terms of money or anything. And we've seen this. We've seen good MAGA type congressmen. You've also seen stupid people that, the grassroots just wrap their arms around and who frankly have no business being in the Congress. But there have been quality people and they had a movement behind them. And the establishment just said, no, we're even the Republican Party will say we're willing to sacrifice a Republican seat to make sure we don't have an actual Trump stalwart in that seat. We'd rather lose that seat than have a Trump person in there. That's what you're up against.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that bad, guys. You have to realize that when I sit here and I talk about gaming out, I put up the map of where the Democratic governors are, right? They split. I'm looking at a map of the country, and I'm like, oh, that's a clearly designed state of affairs to set them all into opposition over the first time Trump oversteps his bounds beyond, when it looks like he's going to win the midterms, expect them all to try and secede from the union. That's what's coming. That's 2020. That's 2026 in a nutshell. So right now, you almost want them to feel like they're winning. If I were gaming this out, I'd want them to feel like they're winning and they've got operational tempo and they can continue to push this thing forward. And then at some point, Trump turns around and goes, what? And then and then he has to literally, pardon the puns, folks, he has to have a Trump card that he can then pull on the country and say, no. This is what's going on. This is what's got to happen. And I don't know that he has that. And I don't know if I know at a certain level, I can just feel it from what I see from the administration, that there are people in the administration who get this, right? The way they're acting. I mean, Stephen Miller's brilliant, and so many of them, right? But
I don't think it doesn't go down very far.
It doesn't go down very far because
I'll tell you where it hardly exists at all, and that's in state Republican parties. I know I'm in one of them. So it's Trump won in 2024 because Trump came into these states with his apparatus and his people. The RNC does a little bit of administrative stuff in the background. So this really does devolve. This really does end up being right back in the lap of American citizens to take themselves much more seriously than they do. This is not a Twitter sphere game, which is where too many people's heads are. This real political combat. There's a role for you to play. Might just be being an election inspector, a poll watcher in your local thing, but there's a role for you. Trump reawakened something that hadn't been there for decades. And that is what we saw with the Trump movement, in terms of people becoming active and being engaged in this process and so on. We can't stand down. 2026 is just, if not more important, as 2024. And it involves everybody taking themselves extremely seriously. This is a Benjamin Franklin moment. I've given you a republic if you can keep it.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Right? It's up to people out there. Donald Trump cannot do any more than he's doing. I mean, he might do a few things better. I'd like to see him do fireside chats. We've talked about that too. But the fault's not going to lie with him if we lose this thing in 2026.
No, it's going to be that it was always fait accompli that this is what was going to happen. So then you have to start, really thinking about, what the arc of all this looks like. And I've been thinking about this a lot recently. And I'll go back, and this is going to sound like a digression that we're going back to Europe. I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to bring it back home really quickly. So when Giorgia Meloni comes to power in Italy, she's up against everything, and very few people understand the American deep state, no less the Italian deep state, which is thousands of years old. And I only somewhat grasped the concept of the Italian deep state, but I understood when she walked in that just after what I saw them do to Matteo Salvini and Luigi Di Maio when they took over, and there was no change in continuity of the upper apparatus around Meloni. Sergio Mattarella, who I've complained about bitterly in the past, was still there as president, overstepping his authority as president and being allowed to do so by various aspects of the Italian deep state and the EU bureaucracy coming in and the pressure coming in from Brussels and Paris and Germany and to a lesser extent London. But early on, Meloni comes in and she's pretty much under fire completely the entire time she's there. And she has to play the game to survive early on. So did she give on immigration at times? Yeah, she did. Did she hold her nose and vote for aid to Ukraine? Yeah, she did. And what did I hear from people all over the place? They tried to defend her. It was, she did this. See, she's just another Pied Piper for the globalists. She was never real, blah, blah, blah. She's just another one of them. Blah. I'm like, okay, maybe. Or given the situation that she's in, is survival all that you can ask for in this moment in time until the situation improves where she can actually maneuver, right? And I've done this type of analysis everywhere. We did it when Putin moved into Syria in 2015 and changed the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East, right? Same kind of thing. All of a sudden, somebody stood up and said, "Oh, they're going to fight the Americans, the American deep state, and the British deep state in Syria? Huh? That's different. Oh, and he's succeeding? Oh, and we found out that Obama and McCain were behind Al Qaeda and ISIS. Oh, that's interesting." So things change. So perception changes slowly over time as you create different facts on the ground. Well, for Meloni, her surviving until Trump comes back to power then gives her more room to maneuver. So now she's in the position, as we discussed in the last video, about her now claiming sovereignty over Italy's gold at a moment in time when the European Union may have just detonated the catalyst that may actually start blowing up the banking system in Europe, especially if Scott Bessent's got her back over Treasury and is sniping from over here. And you've got the BOJ over here. And you've got all these other things I talk about in every other freaking podcast I go on. For Trump, survival of the term may be all that we can ask for. And we have to take that as the victory. And that's a shitty thing to have to say because we can see the future. We can see where we can go and what greatness we can achieve. But this took 130 years to build. The British were plotting against us, and the day after they surrendered, so the Lee surrendered at Appomattox. And they've been plotting against us ever since. You have to realize that this is a long-term project, and it's not going to be turned around in fucking 18 months. And if you don't have the stomach for that fight, and you're unhappy with the fact that Donald Trump is an imperfect, hero in this scenario, I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, you can check out, you can, but you can't leave because this is the reality.
And there's no place to go.
There's nowhere to go. What are you going to do? So you either fight it out.
Go to England?
as best you can. Yeah, where are you going to go? Fucking Panama? Like, give me a break. The last time I went to when I went to the first Cornerstone, and Mikhail Thorov, who runs Expat Money, great guy, love Mikhail. He's like, oh, this is all going to collapse. I'm just trying to help people get out. I'm like, dude, I'm staying and fighting. So I made the choice to stay. A lot of people don't have the stomach to stay, so they left. That's fine. No blame, no shame, folks. But don't bitch about how it's being run, when all you do is say, I want to be a perpetual critic, because being a critic is better. And being a critic is easy. It has no skin in the game.
Well, it's sort of like, it's like a PFC who just got out of basic training and is on the battlefield the first day and say, well, unless we win tomorrow, I'm not going to fight. That's what it is.
No, you fight. And at some point you have to realize that, Trump's our patent, for better or for worse. He doesn't go backwards. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't admit mistakes. He keeps going forward. And whether that works in the realm of geopolitics or not, I don't know. Certainly doing it differently than what everybody is used to, right? And this is part of the reason why I think the commentariat, so many people within the commentariat are crashing out, because they're analyzing his rhetoric, his moves, his negotiating style, and everything else from the standpoint of, this is the way it's always been done. These are the rules of statecraft. These are the rules of international relations, or this or that or anything else. Trump's like, we don't have time for that bullshit. We're remaking the world, folks. And I've said before, and I'll say it again. And who made those rules? British, of course. No argument. And that's why I say, then you have to kind of look and realize that we're in a power politics scenario. We got 3 mob bosses. We got 4, but one of them's being outed from the high table. We got Xi, we got Putin, we got Trump, and we got King Charles. I got news for you. King Charles is trying to figure out how the fuck he survives this, and he's not going to.
And, I'll take this back just sort of maybe as the final coda to it. Everybody watching this, read the national security strategy. And frankly, my advice is, if you haven't read it, stop posting because you don't know what you're talking about, because it's revolutionary. It represents a complete, thorough challenge to this British imperial system, what we know today as globalization. It is thorough in every aspect of it. And the fact that it grounds everything in American system economic policy, to the point it even mentions Alexander Hamilton. That was deliberate. Wow. Putting his name in there at one point, to say, they're talking about supply chains and basically economic sovereignty, as Alexander Hamilton argued, right? So, because that's what's going to be the determining factor, is how many American citizens understand what Trump is doing and join this fight. And stop throwing spitballs from the bleachers when they don't even know what what fight is being fought out on the field.
Yeah, and stop falling for the propaganda that's been thrown at us from mainstream media. And one of the things that the Trump team have got to do, have got to improve their messaging. So the fireside chats, like I think Franklin D. Roosevelt used to do. FDR. Right, FDR. And also Stephen Miller, again, if you want to come on my channel, or Peter Navarro or anything, no problem at all. Just shoot me a DM on X, right? But going on to the 2028 elections, the Republicans have in J.D. Vance a very competent, capable, smooth, articulate, genuine candidate. I mean, Obama was smooth and articulate and handsome too, but nothing genuine about Obama.
Well, he was genuinely a communist.
Well, right.
He pretended not to be, Tom.
He was genuinely a mass.
Not from this perspective. Not from this side of the pond.
Oh, you could see right through him, right? But I did fall for him first time, but no. The Democrats don't have anyone.
No, that's, in a certain, for a change, we're, at least at this point in the process, they're in more disarray. But unfortunately, the Democratic Party is not run by the Democratic Party, and this is a problem that a lot of people have. You know, they look at the Democratic Party and they seem to have their act together, and they have candidates, and they have a permanent apparatus, and they have a get out the vote operation, and they have messaging and so on. Well, it's not the Democratic Party. It's the 501c3s and the 501c4s. It's a much bigger apparatus, which is coming straight from the financier elite, the cartels, the fundies and fondies, not the fundies. You know, so you have that apparatus, and then we poor Republicans look around at the party and we say, "Gosh, how come we keep losing?" But you know, it's really going to be a question of whether people recognize what's at stake, that this is historic, that Donald Trump is a once in a lifetime and maybe a once in a century individual, as unusual as it may be given his personality, right? That this man is a historical individual of that character. And, you know, we have to be able to carry this thing forward. And yeah, J.D. Vance is clearly in my book, the person who can best carry forward Trump. And I mentioned in my show on Wednesday this little freak out at the Council on Foreign Relations the other day when they were analyzing the national security strategy. And the woman who wrote Biden's, Rebecca Lissner, she just went into a riff about, oh my God, this is J.D. Vance. If he gets elected, he's going to carry this forward. They get it. They get it. Which is why you have all the, again, PSYOPs operations inside the party. J.D. Vance by Palantir, he's run by Israel, he's run by this, he's run by that, and, you know, all of this.
And they create 90% of this slop 6 months or a year earlier. Like they spoon fed all that to people like Whitney Webb and the rest of them a year before Trump even returned to power. I mean, that was all clearly a psyop.
Yeah, I mean,
Palantir's software sucks, by the way. Like I know from people who like were engineers on, they're like, yeah, the software sucks, by the way. Just so you know. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So people, I mean, my advice is always just settle down and look at what they're actually doing. Look at what they are actually doing in the real world.
Yeah, and people go to dig deep to find out what they're doing because the mainstream media won't tell you. I mean, I read the analysis in The Guardian, because we spoke about this the other day, Susan, because we recorded a couple of videos on the national security strategy. And I told you that in the Times, they just said it was just far right nationalism in there, right? And then I looked at The Guardian. I read, I can't, it used to be a great campaigning newspaper. But now I read a bit of this article about the national security strategy, and it was just smears and insults and about how far right it is. No substance. No substance, nothing. No actual critique that this isn't going to work, and here's why. So people actually have to go beyond and be able to discern, be willing to discern, and consider there's more we're not being told.
And it's not that hard to find it. I mean, if you're relying on the media to spoon feed it for you, you're not going to find it.
No.
Just go to the White House website.
Yeah, or just PrometheanAction.com or TomLuongo.me.
But you know, I prefer original sources. I mean, I know I'm a pretty good translator for what Donald Trump is doing, but people should prefer original sources. Watch a cabinet meeting. I mean, maybe you're going to put it on 2 times speed, but you know, stop doom scrolling. Watch a cabinet meeting. Listen to their speeches. Watch, you know, Trump's discussion with the ranchers and the farmers, and so you're going to learn something. Now, I wouldn't suggest you watch congressional hearings because that's all performance art.
Yes.
This administration is actually giving you substance. Go to the White House website. Sign up for, I think it's called the White House Wire. Every day, they're going to tell you, you know, they're going to give you, did Trump give a speech? Did Carolyn Levitt say something? Did JD give a speech? Here's the presidential order that was passed. Here's the bills that were signed into law. You know, I mean, you're not going to spend all day doing it. Some of us do because that's our jobs. But, you know, you see the most important stuff. And again, I say, you know, get off social media and get into the real world, and you're going to be much happier, much more effective, and we might just save this country.
And by extension, the world, because if the United States goes down, it all fails. It all fails. It all fails. And it's just that simple. And, you know, and it's because of the fundamental differences between the way the rest of the world is organized and the way the United States is organized. And it comes down to the Constitution. And I do recommend everybody sit down and take 20 minutes and read the Constitution. Think about it. It's a remarkable document. It's got its flaws. They had their fights during the Constitutional Congress. There's going to be things in there that are going to drive you nuts, like why the 3/5 rule and why this and why that. That doesn't make any sense, blah, blah, blah. No. Stop and think about what it is actually saying. And if you're really confused while reading it, go back and read the preamble again.
Right.
And then, because that's really all you really need to read. Because we the fucking people, as opposed to the king.
Yeah.
Or the Politburo. Or the this or the that. And that's the big thing. And that's what our good friend and our missing man, and we'll do the missing man formation this morning, Alex Craner, will remind us all, this is a war against two systems of governance.
Right.
Yeah. And so on that note, folks,
it's economy and globalism.
And that on that, the sun's going down and I'm getting cold. So
no, Tom, Susan, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you so much. PrometheanAction.com, TomLuongo.me, and I'll have their X profiles. Please subscribe and share, and we'll look forward to doing this again in about a month's time. And thank you all so much. All the best. Bye-bye.
Have a great Christmas, everyone.
Oh, yes. Merry Christmas. Just want to say, as a Muslim, it doesn't offend me if you wish me Merry Christmas. And I enjoy wishing you a Merry Christmas because I want you all to have a good time. Merry Christmas.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas.